Hi, my name's Annette Finley-Croswhite. I'm a professor of history, and I'm going to talk to you briefly about historical writing. I think when I think to myself about what I've done over the course of my career, and I've pretty much laid that out here on my dining room table, I think about the time that historians spend in archives. All of my work is archivally intensive, and that means that I have to go to places to do my work. Primarily, I work in France. When I started my career, I was working in 16th century history. My first book, Henry IV and the Towns. And so what I needed to do was learn how to read difficult paleography. You'll see that this document is virtually illegible. And so I had to take courses for about a year to learn how to read 16th century handwriting. I would then have to translate that into legible French and then translate it into English. For Henry IV and the Towns, I worked in 43 archives in France. My next book was co-authored with a good friend of mine named Gail K. Brunel, and it's about the first murder in the Paris metro in 1937. The problem with this book is that the documents concerning Laetitia Thoreau's murder were sealed for 101 years, and it took me 5 years to get the French government to allow me to see the documents that for 5 years they denied existed. That was problematic. The next book that came out of Murder in the Metro is a book that will be published in August. It's called Assassination in Vichy, Marc Stormois and the Struggle for the Soul of France. The complexity of this book is that the investigation of this political figure's murder was so complex and dense that we have something like 12 notebooks of summaries of documents that we weren't allowed to photograph, so we had to sit in archives and transcribe. So that's a form of writing too, and it's generative because you're thinking about it, but it's hard to manage. And so what we ultimately did one summer, my colleague Gail Brunel worked on this for an entire summer, is we made a Dormois Bible where we took our big notes from a variety of archives and we turned them into a chronological list with short summaries of key documents so that as we were writing, we wouldn't have to be digging through big volumes. We could reference to, again, this that we call the Dormois Bible. The project that I'm working on now is a biography, really, of a family of Holocaust victims. And the problem with these documents is that many of them are in Yiddish, which I don't know. So I had to pay translators to translate the Yiddish, and yet I had to work with them. The Yiddish was produced by a woman who was not particularly well educated, and so I had to sit with them to give them context in order to be able to translate these documents. So, going to different places, digging through archives, summarizing archives, and then putting the big stories together, the big narrative, is all the backstory to what turns into a book. For historians, articles are important. Here's my last article published last year, 140 footnotes from many different archives. Took me about 2 years to produce. But for us, the book is everything. We're really evaluated by the books that we produce. As I may have mentioned, it takes me about 10 years, I think, to write a book. I wanted to say something about inspiration, where you get your ideas from, and I thought maybe I'd just think about the last project, the new project that I'm working on. I've done the research and I'm writing it now. Many years ago I was reading this book, French Children of the Holocaust, and I was looking at deportation list. And as I was looking at the names and addresses of children deported from Paris, I came upon my address where I lived in 1985 as a graduate student. That got me so intrigued that I ended up going to London and Paris and Jerusalem and Będzin in Poland to track down this enormous history of this family of victims. And I was lucky enough that the descendants of the survivor of the family allowed me to come to Jerusalem and work in the family archives. All of that precedes the writing process. The last thing I wanted to note is my colleague and I, Gail K. Brunel, when we write together, we always say we write fat and can cut later. So the revision process is also part of writing. I love tinkering with sentences. I love thinking about words and syntax, but ultimately a lot of it ends in the trash bin. The new book that comes out in August is around 100,000 words, but we cut 100,000 words from this manuscript. So the generative process happens while writing is occurring, but a lot of times that writing is just thinking and writing before it actually gets to that final version that goes to press. And so I hope you've enjoyed my tour of some of my work and how historians work. And as part of this Women's Writing Forum, I hope we can engage in discussions about how we do our work so that we can inspire each other. Thank you.